For Volodymyr Zelensky, the Normandy Format talks are arguably the toughest challenge of his almost 7 months as Ukrainian president. On the backdrop of the Trump impeachment inquiry, Germany's approval of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Emmanuel Macron's recent openness towards Moscow.
And I am convinced that this is in our interest, even when we have disagreements, to try to bring ourselves to a common point of view.
Zelensky finds himself in an unenviable position, one where Vladimir Putin holds most of the cards. The Kremlin's strategy is not real peace on Ukrainian terms, but a piecemeal push for concession or capitulation. In Kiev, protesters took to the streets, demanding Zelensky not to make compromises with Russia. The demonstrators want a full prisoner exchange, a sustained ceasefire, and the return of occupied Ukrainian territory free of Russian troops and proxy forces before any sort of local elections can take place. Zelensky's spokesperson says no major concessions will be made, but Michael Carpenter, senior director at the Penn Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement, believes this is a rather utopian idea.
Putin's plan for Ukraine is simple. Keep Crimea off the table while keeping the conflict on the table until Ukraine concedes this constitutionally mandated status. Applied to Ukraine, it entails giving the Donbas region de facto self-government and a de jure veto over the country's geopolitical orientation.
Russia has little option than to freeze its war in the Donbas. A further incursion into Ukraine would require enormous amounts of manpower and military equipment. Crippling international sanctions would likely follow in that scenario. In the short term, financially sustaining the temporarily occupied territory is a heavy burden on Moscow, and it's eager to hand it off to Ukraine. There are fears in Kiev that a special status, a more autonomous entity in the shadow of Russia, could favour Putin. To counterbalance this, Ukraine needs international support more than ever. The House impeachment inquiry into whether Donald Trump withheld military assistance in exchange for compromise on his 2020 political rival Joe Biden thrust Ukraine and the US president's talks with Volodymyr Zelensky into the spotlight. George Kent, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, highlighted the importance of US support for Ukrainian sovereignty.
It's very much in our national interest, in the way we have defined our national interest broadly in Europe for the past 75 years.
On the front line in Donbas, peace cannot come soon enough. The recent divisive withdrawal of military formations from near Zolote, Petrivske and Stanitsa Luhanska is a small step to creating a larger buffer zone. But time is of the essence. Zelensky's approval rating has dropped, according to data from the Kyiv International Institute of Sociology, from around 73% in September to 52% at the end of November. In the run-up to the presidential election, he campaigned on a promise of peace, but at what cost, and perhaps more importantly, at what consequence? This is Tom Bell for UATV.